All right, now we are beginning recording. So while we're kind of prepping here and waiting for a couple of other people to join us on this, Martha, you're at the top corner. What are you getting at? What did you get out of this? Was this, obviously it was worth your time. You're on here again, unless you're just trying to figure out what this was.
No, I got a lot out of it, Nelson. But I took the first course, the Zoom course. So there was the mini nutrition course there. So I wanted the full one. That's why I came back. And it has made a huge difference to my dog to change so many things. I took her to the vet just for a checkup. He said her coat is beautiful, her weight is beautiful, her paws are improved, and like it's just, the list is very long. So I'm back here for whatever else I can learn from everybody's questions.
Okay. Well,
made a huge difference.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. Good. Seriously. Our nutrition is, about 70% of health, essentially. So it's very important for us to be able to give our dogs the ability for their immune system to handle things, because that's what nutrition is about, is not just to give energy, but to help the immune system fight off everything that's always coming at us. So same thing for us. Thanks, Martha. So Pam, how about you? You had a couple of extra questions I'm going to try to get to by the end of it. So go ahead.
Oh, she's muted.
You're muted. You're muted. Sorry.
I'm unmuted now. I have fed my Huskies raw. My one, Roxy, who is purebred, that I actually got from a breeder since she was a year old. And then all of my other Huskies, my personal Huskies, I fed like raw prey style, where you have the different percentages of organs and, all the different kind of things. But since I got a new puppy, I wasn't familiar with the puppy side of it. And there's a lot that Nelson has shared with the sardines and all the other different caveats that go with it, that I wanted to make sure with Koba, I was doing everything the right way. So that's what I got out of it, was the percentages and what else to add besides just the raw prey style, which really helped me. And it actually helped me with my other two girls to start adding some of the different supplements and the vitamins. And my vet has always said I have the healthiest dogs that he's ever met. And, he hates that I feed raw, but he's like, but I can't complain, because their teeth are perfect, and their their paws are perfect, and their coats are perfect, and they have perfect poop and all that kind of stuff. And he has just always complimented me on that. And he's a family friend. And so we've known him for 30 years. So it helped me.
It's funny how a lot of vets, it's funny how a lot of vets, nothing against vets, but I don't know why they cringe against raw feeding.
Because they're not nutritionists and they don't know
I understand that, but every time they look at a dog who's had raw feeding, they're the healthiest ones out there.
Right. And mine are all,
if it's done right.
Yeah, all good weights and, all that kind of stuff. And so it's a perfect example, but I'm glad that I took the class so I could learn the tweaking of it, so that I can also, so with Koba, since he is so young, I wanted to start him off right.
Good. Yeah, it's a variety of a number of things. I really wanted to explain the digestive system so that everybody understood what a dog needs, not just here, feed this and then feed this. you shouldn't get lazy with feeding your dogs.
Mhm.
If you get into a rut, you're probably depriving them of some aspect of nutrition that they're going to need. So that's where just making people aware of it. Yeah. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Sure.
So Tiffany, I'm just going to pick a couple out here. Tiffany, what have you gotten out of this? Oop, can't hear you.
Sorry,
There you are.
sorry, give me 1 second. Hi, I'm here.
Ah.
I just spent the past 10 minutes fighting with my audio, so I'm a little out of sorts. What have I gotten out of this? I think the biggest thing is really kind of getting into the not the word that I think I want, but just the diversity of things that they can and maybe should eat, instead of just sort of, yeah, here's the kibble, or even just, here's the raw, right? Like, it's more than just kibble, canned food, and, raw meat. It's, all of these different things, all of these different aspects to consider. Rather, it's not a linear, maybe a 0-1 sum sort of a thing.
Right. So it's interesting to have, when I was doing a lot of study on this, there's actually a lot more information now than 20, 30 years ago. Obviously, we've made a lot of progress with things, but understanding there's actually a purpose and a use for starches too, instead of avoiding them as some. So there's various times that you actually need these different aspects, different types of foods. And that's what I was trying to explain through this. I know I kind of blasted through things. I was really trying to cram as much in as I could in 3 hours. So I apologize to anybody who was kind of lost. Didn't mean to be that way, but hopefully you got enough out of it. And again, the review on video. So, okay, thanks, Tiffany. I'm going to do one last one. Actually, I'm going to go to Laura. Laura, what did you gain out of this? I need to know what I got to have feedback from you guys. I know what I told you. I just don't know what you're taking from it.
Yeah. So again, I got a lot of information out of this. Oh, sorry. So it was interesting, the digestive tract, lengths having to do with the type of diet that they are. That was very interesting. The protein amounts with different ages of dogs. There was a lot of little tidbits in there that are really useful when you're talking about nutrition with your clients. So I got a lot of stuff out of this.
Good. Okay. Excellent. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. So I'm going to get right to the questions. Let's see. Speaking of the devil, Laura, which part of the digestive tract produces the hydrochloric acid? That's stomach acids, period.
Yes.
So it's interesting, though, in the studies that we had. So I can, matter of fact, I'll type a follow-up for you guys. I'm just looking at your questions here, but Ito et al., there was probably 2 or 3 other Japanese scientists also in 1980 that did an excellent job at studying the digestive tract and the pH levels and stomach acids. And Sagawa also in 2009, and we had another one, Lonsdale, in 2001. Those are the studies that I looked at. And so the pH ranges, it's really interesting on the cycling of that. So pH goes down to between 1 and 2 when you introduce food into the stomach, which is highly acidic, obviously. I mean, it's it will disintegrate bone. That's how much, that's how much hydrochloric acid is in there. And that can stay up to about 7 hours at that 1 to 3 pH range. Once it gets into the large intestines, it actually goes a little more basic. So it goes to the 3 to 4 or 5 range. And by the time it gets to the duodenum, which is the little pocket, if you will, that receiver element that goes from the small intestines into the large intestines, that spot where for us, we have our appendix coming into that. So the duodenum, by the time it's there, it's actually base. It gets above. So it goes into 7, 8 range rather than down to 1. So it's really interesting how the body, so otherwise, if it stayed at that pH level, it would eat through their intestinal tract. So the body manages that range, initially breaking down those food sources, and frankly killing off any bad bugs that are in it. So that's why they can pick up roadkill and eat it that way. So because it kills off all of those biologicals, things that we worry about, such as salmonella, they don't have to worry about. So all the salmonella scares with dog and cat foods are for the humans, not for the dog or the cat. So, okay. So Kinsey and Rachel, kind of a common thing here. It says amylase levels, ancient breeds. What source confirms which proves they can't really process starches versus other breeds? And then Rachel, could provide some of the studies which say no amount of carbs are necessary for dogs? Well, that's not exactly right. We're not talking about carbs. Pure carbs are worthless as far as, for instance, rice. It's worthless to a dog for nutritional aspect. But Carpentier in 1988, I will send you guys all of these things if you really want to go into scientific study.
Right, the sustainable diet, long term.
I'm sorry?
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I did it.
Okay.
Sorry about that. Now I'm typing out a question for you. I didn't realize it was not muted.
Okay. So Carpentier in 1988 has a very good layperson explanation for general species understanding. And that's actually, I saw that on the Volard dog nutrition website. And it's at, let's see, it was October 14th of 2020 is when they had that article on there. So that's a good source for you right there. But also, essentially, it's just genetics. It's the genetics that, and I showed you on the presentation, I showed you the chart of the types and numerical amylase for each, well, not all breeds, obviously, but a sampling of breeds. And you saw where Huskies, Greenland sledge dogs, those had only 2 or 4 copies of amylase, where other dogs may have up to 16. And that's the difference, is the processing ability of starches, of carbohydrates. There's no way they can. So therefore it just becomes bulk. That's literally what it is. And that's what happens in their poop. So it just bulks up their poop, which can be useful if you have a dog with heavy diarrhea for some reason. You bulk it up and that slows it down. And that's the whole point of starches for dogs. So, okay. Can it be tested how much amylase a dog has to adjust nutrition? It probably can, but I'm not sure that it's worth the expense and the time to worry about it. You know the general ranges, the ancient breed dogs, those 13 breeds, you can pretty much stay away from those types of starches. They're probably better off with over the years with their diet. The simple answer is yes, but the why is not known. But there are loads of studies and information on pancreatitis increases, which becomes an issue. Oh, did I?
They just said you froze. The people. It's back now.
Are we back? Can you guys hear us? They're frozen, which
Yes.
means I'm frozen.
No, we
Okay.
can
you're
hear
good.
you. Yeah,
Okay.
You were, but now you're fine.
Okay. So I don't know what you heard.
Nelson, you were asking a question, but we didn't
Okay.
hear the question.
Okay.
Like, you cut
So-
off in the middle of whatever that last thing that you were covering.
Okay. So do we know if there's a rise in pancreatic cancer in dogs over the years with their diet? As I said, as an answer is the simple answer is yes. Do we know why? Not exactly. But with all of the increase of chemicals and preservatives and everything else, it's done the same thing to dogs as it has to us. We do know the causes of pancreatitis, however, and that has increased substantially, exponentially as well. And a lot of it has to do with what is fed, which is a lot of kibble-based stuff with starches. So it's too heavy in those types of the binder is also the bulk, and the bulk also causes health issues, especially the amount that they use in a lot of different kibbles. That's why, it's you don't have to become a dietary nutritionist to start reading the contents and the percentages of plant-based protein versus meat-based protein, that they rank the proteins. You start looking for kibbles that are much lower in plant-based binders and more in meat-based proteins. That's what you look for kibble. That's why I like Akana. That's why I like Origin, if your dog can handle that richness. That's why I like Merrick. There's others there too. So, but do your own homework on that. Pam says, are the nutritional needs for puppies the same? No, I think we went over that. Did I not answer that? Okay. So no, additional proteins are mainly necessary. But that also, and one thing I probably didn't do, that also trains the gut, the digestive system for that puppy as to, by training the gut, I mean the microbiome in the gut itself as to what it needs to be to have a healthy animal. So I hope that clears that up. Okay. So the digestive system, I don't remember if I said anything about this or not, but the neurons, the neurons that make up a lot of the bulk of the brain, there's more than that. Matter of fact, I think 30% is neurons of the mass of the brain. And we have 84 billion approximately neurons in our adult human brains, except in Washington, D.C. No, I'm kidding. I shouldn't joke. Anyway, but we also have 200 million neurons in our intestinal tract. And so when you, not just through microbiome, but when you are actually feeling it in your gut, literally the food, your senses, all those things, that's what's going on there, is those neurons are sending signals to your brain. So you're not just training the microbiomes and getting good bugs in your gut, so to speak, to help you properly develop the ability to absorb the proper nutrients through food. You're teaching it through its neurons what it feels like to have good food, which also tells the brain. So you're literally training the brain as well as the gut at the same time by how you feed puppies and what you feed puppies. Okay, I hope that makes sense, guys. So it's very important. That's why I did this class. Is yeah, I'm not hearing this out there. It may be out there, I don't know, but I'm not hearing this out there. Olivia says, are sardines a good option for omega-3s? Yes, absolutely. You've got to watch the salt amounts. It's why I use it in water only and not oils and nothing else. But so you got to watch the sodium amounts that are in sardines. Generally, it's fairly low. You can use it once, maybe twice a week as a supplement, as a treat, or even just in the food itself. Okay, got that. Well, okay. I think I made a comment, and I think I made a comment, and I went back and reviewed because this question was odd, and I went, well, that's strange. Why did you ask that? And then I realized I combined two thoughts in two sentences and wasn't aware of it at the time. And I guess I was just blasting away. It says yeast are animals, not microbes. Well, actually, yeast are considered a fungi. I have no idea what I was thinking at the time. It's apparently what I said. But they're
Access. Because
well, they're
seem to know what you're talking about most of the time.
except when I don't. Yeah, no, yeast are actually considered fungi, but they're an interesting type of fungi because they have two modes to them. One, you probably don't, but I'm going to tell you. One is an asexual mode that they replicate. They actually send little shoots off, and then when there's less nutrition for them, when they're almost in a starvation mode, they actually go into a sexual mode and replicate that way. So they're a very odd life form. And if you want to get into all of the stuff with yeast, I can send you all sorts of information on yeast. It's pretty fascinating little thing. And apparently, the Egyptians, and even before that, discovered the capability of yeast to create alcohol. So they were doing lots of things with alcohol 5,000, 7,000 years ago. Tiffany says, is rice then bad idea for upset stomachs? Well, yes and no. And the yes part is if it is to slow down the digestive tract, rice almost literally has no value as a food. It's simply a bulking agent. It slows down the digestive tract to repair it. When you add chicken and rice, or chicken, cooked chicken and with chicken stock into the rice, then they are getting the nutrition from that, not from the rice itself. Okay, then the rice is simply a bulking agent that helps slow down that. And when a dog is sick, basically it's going to have more of a diarrhea type situation. So it's not going to get the nutrition unless you slow it down. So that's the purpose of the rice. It's simply a binder that allows the digestive tract to absorb what it can through this. Okay, so that's the reason. And there's actually, where is this? There is a good article and it's in, I found it originally, I can't remember where, but it was a study, but I found it online in an article in the I'll call it magazine, in the publication Dogs Naturally. And if you look up "Can Dogs Eat Rice" under Dogs Naturally, you'll probably find that study. And it's really a good compilation of the scientific study itself. It's a number of pages long, so it's got good information. So that should help you with the rice aspect. Okay. Okay, back to Rachel. Are these percentages measured for 100% of the nutrition? I don't know what you're referring to. I assume I was saying 2 to 5%, etc. What would then be the rest? If, let's say, 25% should be proteins, but carbs are not doing any good, what if the lacking 75% made up? Well, there, as far as the percentages I was talking about, is the total mass or volume of the food itself. So 2 to 5% for some additive. And generally what I do is more towards the 2% line of things, because I will do it a couple of days in split, for instance, greens or some other aspect. So I would rather err on the lower side and have the adjustability than to overdo some amount, especially something like garlic, which can become really bad, okay, when you get into a higher percentage. So I hope that answers at least some of that. And I think we have some other things down here. What about eggshells ground up? Okay, so it's the shells have a little bit of not only for young but old dogs, a little bit of added benefit from the standpoint of the calcium, but it's really the colostrum of the inner lining that you're getting the main bulk of the benefit from on the shell. Obviously, they get a little calcium. There's some other microchemicals in there as well, but having those in there, and honestly, I probably do eggs maybe once a week. That's it. And if for instance for Bosch, he's eating probably 2 1/4, 2.5 cups of a combination of kibble, bone broth, and meat, and then I will put egg in there also. And he usually, for his size and what he's doing, he needs about 3 eggs, whereas Toffee, literally half his size. I give her 2 eggs since she's young, and a Malahide Chepenois, so higher energy. And for the Huskies, just one egg. And even with that, Callie, she eats around the eggshell. She'll eat maybe 1/4 of the eggshell itself rather than the whole eggshell. The rest of them just snarf it down. So, okay. And then Rachel, I'm not sure what this was in. Okay. Says an additional question, if protein is destroyed by cooking, which it is, what does it become replaced with? Well, once protein is broken down by heat, the chemical components remain, but they're not reassembled by digestion in the body. So they're just separate chemicals within that. That's it. Okay. So they're not processed, they're not recognized by the body as protein at that point. Okay. So it just becomes bulk waste. So when the dogs catch rabbits in the yard, they aren't actually providing much nutritional value. Well, yes, they are if they eat enough of it, but rabbits are very dry meat. They, for certain breeds of dogs, they're used to, again, like a husky, they need a high fat content. So if all you fed was rabbit, they would waste away, frankly. But there's many other nutritional animal proteins, the bone, the organs, etc., that are also digested. And there's a little bit of fatty content, but the rabbits are very, very dry meat.
Question about the previous topic, when protein is cooked.
Yeah,
Does that mean it's empty calories at that breakdown point?
it can be the higher heat. I'll give you an example. I think Origin is the one that they flash cook at only 196 degrees, I believe, for 5 minutes. That's their main, and so it maintains the maximum amount of proteins in protein form rather than higher heat, which a lot of the other for kibble and for canned food, a lot of the other companies use a higher heat for longer time periods. So.
And how much of the protein is destroyed by cooking, say 1 pound of beef?
Well, okay, so depending on how long it is, you're losing anywhere from 15 to 20% of the protein, probably for every 5 to 10 minutes that you're cooking at a higher heat, especially. So you're losing some of the protein, not all of it. There's still, there's still some, but if you overcook meat, you're going to break down that protein to where it's almost unusable to the body. It just becomes a non-nutritional source for what's necessary. Okay. I hope that answers that.
Yes.
I'm trying to go on. Sorry, guys. I'm still on the first page. Beef is not on the list of benefit of meat. Why? It just wasn't, but it is very good. Mostly, yes, beef and buffalo are considered one of the most digestive neutral meats, frankly. And I use beef and buffalo an awful lot. It just didn't happen to be on those charts that I was sharing with you guys. Because a lot of people use that mostly. So I was trying to show you other protein sources and where they are in the grand scheme of things. But frankly, I use a lot of fish proteins, salmon and beef, buffalo. The lamb is very, very sparsely used, and only when a dog needs that, frankly. A little bit of pork, but the problem with pork is because of trichina worm ingestion and those things. Same thing with chicken. They have to be cooked for a longer period at a higher heat to make sure that those things are killed off. So, duck is a pretty good one. But again, it's a game meat and dry. Hannah says calcium stunning bone growth. I know with puppies who have been prematurely neutered are more prone to lack bone density because they're unable to absorb calcium. Would giving them more calcium than that of the unneutered dog help? Good question. Somewhat, but percentage-wise, it's really a poor substitute for the way hormones change and use the molecular structure of calcium, and it becomes a filler rather than. So the way the hormones would assemble the nutrients of calcium, in other words, the organic molecular structure, would be different than just supplementing if those hormones aren't there to help regulate how that bone, how the body uses that and the bone structure organizes and grows in a natural way. So again, somewhat, but not as good as if you don't spay or neuter. So Tracy, is there a significant enough difference between organic and non-organic chicken to justify swapping to organic? Yes, if you can actually identify that the source and it really is truly organic, because a lot of places say it's organic when that's, not necessarily a good good thing. If you can actually identify a good source that is known organic, free range chickens, not just in a crappy yard somewhere, literally and figuratively, then yes, that would be a good source for that sort of protein. Tiffany, are there any sorts of blood tests or anything to get these values asked when talking about zinc, copper, calcium, iron? Yes, they can detect those things. You would have to do it every 3 days though, to really get a line of exactly what it is when you fed stuff. So you can take some samples. For instance, when you take your dogs to the vet, you can get a blood test and sample those and see as a general item, okay, every 4 months, 6 months, a year, whatever you do, and you can get a general idea of what the values are in there based upon what you have been feeding, the dog's activity level, where they've been, all of those things. And so over time, you can do that. If you wish to have that tested over a shorter period, once a week or so, maybe once every month, if you feed a certain way and then change a few items, etc., and you see where those values go, you could certainly do that as a test. But if you watch your dog, you see the healthy coat, the softer paws, and all of those things, make sure the gums are good and you're not getting an overage of harders and things like that, which can cause problems above the gums and cause heart disease and all sorts of things if you don't take care of the gums and the teeth. So blood tests can certainly give you those values, but it's a snapshot in that moment. It requires a long-term study to determine for that dog. It becomes expensive in that and needing testing. But if you want to do that study, if you're going to have dogs the rest of your life, it wouldn't be a bad thing to do that with 1 or 2 of your dogs and see how the nutritional aspects change those levels. You have a base level and then from there. So that was a good question. I hope that helps. M. Gordon, recommendations on brands of lion's mane, wild salmon, and krill. Is there a dog specific product or can it be purchased from the health food store as a human supplement? No, I would use dog specific on those. Actually, some supplements, some foods and supplements should only be used with dogs that are dog centric, because even with cats, it's different. I know that sounds strange, but I would not use cat supplements with dogs. There's specific ones that they have different formulas. So yeah, human only. As far as wild salmon, I use Alaska, wild Alaska brand generally with the wild salmon oil. Krill, I just bought. Would you do me a favor?
Run and get something.
Yes, downstairs on the center counter where I feed the dogs, there's a little tub like this,
Okay.
plastic tub of krill.
Okay.
We'll go.
And Gordon also wants to know resources for quercetin and ionic zinc.
Okay. All right. Well, let me get that in a minute. So lion's mane, I don't have a specific brand for that, honestly. And typically I actually use turkey tail more than lion's mane. I used a lot of turkey tail with Nellie when she had cancer. She ended up between the turkey tail and all the other nutritional aspects that I used with actually higher proteins, which unfortunately the vet recommended to go to low protein and all these other things. I said, thank you, I'll handle it. She had given her, I think, 2 weeks to 2 months to live, and we had 4 years left. So this is, if you can see this, from Herb Smith Company. This is sustainable wild caught Antarctic and antioxidants. And this is pure krill, and it's ground up. And I'm trying this right now. So it's Herb Smith is the company. You can get it online. I'll open it up, and it's literally just, and Callie's here sniffing at it, wanting some because it's nice and nasty, smelly krill. And of course, she really wants this stuff. My dogs love it. I just put it in with their food and they just eat it up. It's a powder. And you can kind of see that. So it's got some moisture to it. It's just ground up krill is what it is.
Smells lovely.
Yeah, yeah.
I can smell it from back here.
It's pretty pungent, but you keep it in the plastic
Bella.
to keep the oxygen out of it. And yeah,
Could you
you see
hold it up one more time? I was trying to take a picture and my
Here.
picture blurred.
there's one of the participants here that wants it. That's my 18-year-old.
Could you hold it up one more time? Thank you.
Too close. There you go.
There we go. Got it. Okay. So I'm trying it. I am pretty happy with the results. The dogs certainly like it. As you can see, they all attack me here. And it's pungent.
Uh-huh.
It's potent. So I'm experimenting with that. And again, I'm happy with the results. It's just, yeah.
Now I don't need that. No.
Just trying to sharing the wealth.
Uh-huh.
Okay. So let me see, where did I stop? Here we go. Diane says, is Nelson available for one-on-one nutritional sessions? I can be. I think a couple other people. Yeah, Cheryl, review what I feed. Yes, I can. I'll be happy to do that. Rachel, green beans, uncooked or cooked? Definitely cooked, but frankly, only the seeds themselves, the shell doesn't have much of anything. So just the seeds themselves would be what I would be using, and not much of it because they're legumes. Humans can't have uncooked green beans. This is true for dogs also. Yes, that is true. And it's actually the grainy structure, the cutting of the sheathing that causes the micro lacerations. In other words, the pods themselves, not the seeds. And they have microtoxins. Heating breaks down and dilutes some of that. So that helps. So if you shelled the green beans, in other words, and just use the beans, I don't know that it's worth it, frankly. Jenny, would using the water after boiling potatoes be beneficial? I don't know that I would ever use that myself. I don't see the point. Would including fermented foods in their diet may be recommended, like sauerkraut? Yes. Chelsea, how often should additives like egg be given? About once a week is what I usually do, somewhere in that range, once every 7 to 10 days. And that's really all that's necessary. If you overdo any one thing, the body may absorb it, but then it just excretes it immediately because it can't use it. So there is no use in overdoing anything, frankly. So it's all about balance, guys. And it's about trying to give enough of that balance of different things so that the body can absorb what it needs at the time and it doesn't just get rid of it. Okay. can he speak to the idea of hot versus cold proteins? I can. I would rather not confuse or put one more layer on there. I think if you just rotate the proteins well, you can experiment with the concept of hot versus cold. You can experiment with your particular dog, and each dog is different how it sees those proteins. And I would just categorize certain segments of proteins a certain way. And again, I went through lamb versus this versus that. You know, at times lamb is very good for the dogs. Generally, I wouldn't use it because it's a lower protein source. So, so it depends on the dog and what stage it is in. There is no absolute on anything. Okay, your dog is going to tell you what it needs. With the supplements like zinc, are human grade options okay, or should we always be looking for dog specific products? I would err on the side of dog specific, frankly, because the amounts that are in human, you know, I mean, human adult is huge mass wise compared to, and how we absorb things compared to how dogs are. Okay. Olivia, we switched to raw feeding a few months ago, and initially one of my dogs was puking bile in the morning. This is this hunger puking, and is it normal? We added a bit more carbohydrate to the do-it-yourself meals, and it hasn't happened, but I don't want to be overdoing it with the carbohydrates. So here's the thing. It's changing the entire biome structure within your dog. So it's that overlay of new microbiomes causes a lot of that problem. So that's where, if you have a dog that has a certain microbiome structure and you're trying to replace it entirely, you're going to get that sort of situation. And that's where you get diarrhea, you get the bile puking, you get all of that sort of stuff, because it's just not, the microbiome is not breaking down the food properly. So it's starving the dog in one way, and it's causing those issues. And so that's where that's with a dog like that, that's where you reintroduce some of the old style of things. So putting in carbohydrates was a good idea, because what it does is it allows the dog to, first of all, carbohydrates absorb that acidic aspect of things. So so it becomes a kind of like Pepto-Bismol to us. And so, but it also allows the time for the stomach. So you do when you change a food, and I don't, because I don't have problems with those things, but when you change a food, if you've got a full bulk, you would do 20% of the new food, 80% of the old, the next day, 30, 70, 60, 50, et cetera, so that it allows time for the new microbiome to develop itself. And typically 3 to 5 days is enough for most dogs. Some dogs are more sensitive, and because of genetics and because of the way dogs have been bred over the past 50 years, somewhat poorly, and that genetic line could get into even a purebred, you know, good line, that genetic pattern could get into that. You have those problems. So where am I?
Arlington.
Yeah, there it is. What did I do with that first one? Oh, there it is.
Just
Okay.
figure it out.
All right. I hope I'm answering these well enough for you guys.
There's more questions adding up.
Adequate.
I'm just waiting for the right moment.
So we spend 5 days on puppy development and we got 12 questions. We spend 3 hours on nutrition and I get 1,000 questions. It's interesting. I'm trying to catch up here. Where did we do this? Hello, Toffee. Hello, you Malaherd. Okay. So yeah, again, carbs absorb some of that. pH level is changing with that, and that's what you're working on as well. So that pH level. Chelsea, could you get? I'm sorry. Oh, okay. could we get an example of calculating the percentages, especially for those of us who will be supplementing kibble? Maybe it's really simple, but I'm wondering how to determine 2% banana as it compares to a cup of kibble. Okay, so keeping any supplement under 5% of the volume, the total mass, in other words, and only supplement in rotations. That's what I do. So I don't overdo it. So between 2 to 5%, you can kind of look at the bulk and say, okay, well, about that much is somewhere around 2 to 5%. If I have 2 cups and I have a teaspoon of something, that's about 2 to 5%. Okay. So that's what I'm looking at, is just a little bit of supplementation. If you're uncertain about it, what you're looking for is allowing the body to absorb this over time. You're not trying to throw it all in at once and fill up the body. It doesn't do that. So it'll absorb what it can of that percentage of stuff that you put in there. It's not going to absorb every bit of that from that first time. So 3 days from now, I'm going to use the same stuff in the same amount. The body will build up what it needs over time. That's why, for instance, my written protocol that I did with the food grade diatomaceous earth, what I give people a simpler formula when they're changing their dog's diet to something better. And the first thing that I have them do, if they've been on other types of foods, is that the first 10 days, you're going to do a teaspoon for a 50-pound dog, let's say 50 to 100-pound dog, teaspoon of food grade diatomaceous earth every meal for the first 10 days. You're also going to have about a teaspoon of wild salmon oil in there for the first 10 days too. And you're going to have New Pro, or Wendy's, what does she call it? Whatever it is, Valhard's stuff, and or Missing Link, or one of those types of supplements, Dinovite, I guess it's been advertised a lot. One of those better types of supplements. I use New Pro again. And you're going to use that for 10 days as well, about a tablespoon for that same size. So those first 10 days. So I try to make that simple. Then you're going to stop. And the only thing you're going to rotate then is the New Pro and the salmon oil, and once every 3 days, not twice a day, just once every 3 days. Sometimes 4 to 5 days is all that's necessary. After you give them the opportunity to absorb all the nutrients that they need those first 10 days, there's no use in going on that schedule. The body will deplete a little bit of it. You just supplement a little bit and it gets it back up to where it needs again. So you don't want to do this. You don't want to crash them and just go, once every month or so. But diatomaceous earth, you only need that once every quarter or so. So once every 3 to 4 months for about 3 days is all that's necessary, that teaspoon per meal. So diatomaceous earth, 10 days to begin with, only 3 days in about 3 or 4 months, every 3 or 4 months. And I probably do it average of 3 or 4 times a year is all. And that cleans the dogs out. It cleans all the dead cells from their intestinal tract. It deworms them if there's any chance of worming naturally. And it gives you an indication if they need more deworming in the intestinal tract. If you're looking at their poop, you pick up their poop afterwards. That probably second day, if they have any worms at all, you're going to see those. Well, the ones that you can see, you have hookworms or stuff like that. Okay.
How often do you add probiotic powder to your dog's meals? The bottle instructions say every day, but I don't know if that's necessary.
No. Prebiotics and probiotics, if you're feeding your dog regularly well, and the microbiome in the gut is healthy, honestly, once every 2 months is about all I do. That's it.
And with the diatomaceous earth, does that take care of all intestinal worms?
It does not necessarily takes care of it. It gives you an indicator. If I were used only that, I would use a dewormer if I get an indication, say, the second quarter that I use that for 3 days. I'd probably use a one-time pill dewormer, be done with it. It's really not harmful to the dog.
I'm gonna go ahead and mute Sean's iPad. I think there's some sound coming through on that one.
Okay, so let me get back to these questions. Gosh,
We're on page 2.
yeah, we're on page 2 and we spent an hour. I knew this would happen. Like I said, it will just be whatever it is. Let's see. Supplement, Rachel, Laura. Oh no, Rachel, 2 to 5% fibers per meal, or combine both veggies and fruits, or 2%, 5% fruit, and additionally 2%, 5% veggies. Again, that goes back to what they have or haven't had. Don't know that I would put 10% of the food as both fruit and vegetable at a time. If you're using canned dog foods, good ones, good quality meats, and some kibbles, you're probably already getting that percentage anyway in that. So again, I err on the side of about 2% so that I don't go over that 5% value, even in combination. Does that help? Okay. Yeah, it's too much. 4 to 5% most on a regular basis for combining those. Is it true that the fruit and vegetable fibers need to basically be pulverized for it to have any value? Well, first of all, canines don't chew, as we went over. So and those enzymes don't necessarily break down particular fibers, especially leaf fibers. So plant leaf fibers don't get broken down by the enzymes that dogs have. And that's odd when you think about hydrochloric acid, but it doesn't work that way. So with the leaf fibers, then yes, they maintain their integrity and it bleeds out along the side. So it's not that you want to pulverize it and make it a paste, but you want to finely chop those things. And I mean extremely finely, because it bleeds out the edges. So Jessica, if you dose slippery elm 2 hours prior to meals, what do you mix it with to give it to the dog? Generally what I do is like a sardine or a small amount of liver, just a tiny bit, just to get them interested in the taste and to get that. That's it. I hope that helps. Is slippery elm another mushroom? No, it's a type of tree. Martha says, what are the signs that a dog has yeast issues? The best indicators are discomfort. So excessive licking, scratching, chewing in the same location, those sorts of things, messing with the ear, whining, all of those sorts of things are going to give you paw licking between the toes, things like that are going to give you an indicator of yeast infections. Tiffany is regularly giving probiotics a good general practice. Regular is subjective, as I said. Practice good rotations and general supplements, and then probiotics are only necessary once in a while. Like I say, generally, probably every month and a half to 2 months is all I do on probiotics. It's not necessary if you have a healthy gut biome. And if you rotate the foods properly to where the dogs, over a period of time, the health in their gut biome is able to handle all of those different rotations of foods. That's a healthy gut biome. Okay. Stacy, would the slight antibiotic aspect of coconut oil counteract probiotics? Not generally. Most have a different tolerance and characteristics. So different biotics are affected by different antibiotic aspects. That's why there's so many different antibiotics for humans too, based on, you've got clindamycin, you've got, amoxicillin, you've got all the penicillin-based types, you've got aerobic, anaerobics, you've got all sorts of things. So generally coconut oil is not going to do that. Cheryl, probiotics recommendation would be appreciated. Did I not do that?
Say that.
Probiotics recommendation? I thought I had. If I don't, I will add that. If I did not, I will add that to what I typed for you guys. Okay.
Jessica said it's in the power.
Okay.
Thank you, Jessica.
So Purina Fortiflora isn't a good source. Yes, it's okay. But again, it's about powder versus, all of these different aspects, as I explained in the class, as well as the chain of custody of whether it was refrigerated, how it's delivered, how it's provided to you. That's it. It's about the CFU, or the colony forming units. That's what you're really looking for, right? Jenny, are there brands of refrigerated human pre and probiotics, I guess, that canines can have as well? Maybe similar, but it's best formulated for canines. The PFTs for the digestive system. Probiotics must be produced for dogs, not humans, correct? Yes. From Kristen, I've read that spore forming probiotics do not need to be refrigerated. Generally, that's true, but the quality is always the issue. So it's that you have a better CFU count in a refrigerated atmosphere. That's really what you're looking for, is a higher level of CFUs. Otherwise, you're going to be trying to develop it over a longer period of time. And that's fine if you want to do that. Yes. From Chelsea, how do we determine mold spores on our kibbles? Is it visibly obvious? Do you just need to learn more about how your company is supposed to be processing things? So best practice is to study the kibble manufacturing process and company. That's why I recommend, it's what I do. So study the company itself that's providing that kibble. And I will tell you that as soon as you break the seal, regardless of what type of container you put it in, you've introduced those microspores from the air into that food. So it's better to rotate through, especially kibble, an opened item, 5 to 7 days at the most. That's what I do.
What does that mean exactly?
In other words, once you open a bag, it better be gone in 5 to 7 days. I would not get a larger bag that's going to last for a month. It's going to go bad on it.
Would it help to freeze the kibble to reduce mold spores?
It would help to freeze it, yes, but then you'd have to warm it up for your dogs each time, which if you warm it up, if you stick it in microwaves actually break down atomic structure and change food to God knows what. So stay away from microwave popcorn and everything else. Rachel, how to get the information how food manufacturers are producing their food if they don't reveal it on their website? Well, actually, the good manufacturers will tell you. They're the ones, the most likely the best ones are going to tell you somewhere, either through their marketing, manufacturing, or there's articles. There's certainly a lot of articles out there about different companies and how they produce food, et cetera, et cetera. So, but it's also why I recommend the companies that I do. They're smaller companies. They're more what Purina and those want to call boutiques, which they hate, which is why they've tried to buy them all up or put them out of business, because they're cutting into their profits. But there's certainly a market for them, and I would rather Yeah, I'd rather pay 70, 80, $90 for a 20, 25 pound bag every 5 or 7 days and keep my dogs healthy than to pay a vet bill of thousands of dollars for something wrong with my dogs. So. Hey, got to page 3. Robin says, I'm sure someone asked, but please tell me we're getting an email of these slides. It's way too much to take notes. Well, you guys have had the you've had the recording of this, correct? Please tell me you've had the recording to look it over. Yes, yes, okay. So make sure you record, make sure you reviewed the recordings. Okay. That's where those come from. Tracy, how do you get animal fur and feathers if you don't live on a farm? So sources for raw feeding, including whole prey and live feeding sources. If you can't get fur and feathers that are clean like that, the psyllium fiber is a good substitute, and the psyllium husk you can get, and it's about 1.25 teaspoons per pound of food is how I would do it. So it doesn't take much. Okay, it's a low percentage. So psyllium husk, and that's available, and that's a substitute if you don't have fur or fiber. Pache, when reducing a dog's food to lose weight, how would you be aware and compensate for lost nutrition? For example, when I noticed my husky was getting a bit chonky, that's a technical term, right? Chonky. I reduced her food by 1 cup a day gradually. She has been a steady 70 pounds now on 2 cups a day, though the food bag would have me feeding her. Yeah, don't go by what the food bag says. Feeding her 3 to 4 cups for her weight. Well, first of all, it's a husky, so that's about half the amount of any other dog in the first place. Somewhere between half and 2/3, depending on the activity level of that husky. They're different than other dogs. Their genetics are different. They are capable of going on much less food normally, period, because they are extremely effective at using that energy. Since she's getting less food, she's getting less nutrients for her weight. True, but the need is about nutrients, not the volume. So that nutrient level that dog needs when it balances out and stabilizes isn't what other larger dogs need either. Okay. So what you're actually doing is filling the nutrient need for that dog at that level. Okay. I hope that answers that. Okay, another one-on-one consultations. Yes, I can do that, guys. Nina, is it true peas are linked to blocking a dog's natural production of taurine? Yes. From LCCMF. Okay. Does the high sodium and canned human grade meat have any negative side effects? If you feed more than 1 out of 20 times, yes. So in other words, if you have canned processed ham, which has a lot of sodium, a lot of other things in it that humans are capable of handling, that's not good for dogs. So yes, sodium, high sodium, for instance, canned mackerel, human grade mackerel. I use that maybe once every 2 weeks for my dogs because they're canned in brine, so highly, salinous. So it's not good for them. So about once every 28 meals, I guess, once every 2 weeks, I would have used that. I haven't used mackerel in quite a while because there's other good substitutes. Salmon, actually, human grade salmon, you can get it for $3 something at the grocery store even right now for a pretty good size can, bigger than a dog food can. So it's a good substitute. from Rachel. Maybe Nelson gets into this, but what I'm interested in, how to read, interpret the additives in kibbles and wet food, and how to know if they're sufficient or not, like different vitamins. Well, kibble, how can I put this? Kibble is balanced in certain ways. They try to provide a balanced, a dog could live, let me put it this way, could live an average time on nothing but kibble. I'd hate to be that dog, but it could. Doesn't mean it's going to. A lot of dogs don't. If they are on that same kibble their entire lives, they're not going to be that healthy, frankly. But it's so AFCO, which is AAFCO, is the quasi-government group that says what minimums are. Well, okay, that's just to keep the dog alive. And that's what a lot of manufacturers go to. Well, some of the manufacturers go well beyond that, and that's what you're looking for. And that's, again, the recommendations for those canned and kibbles and other types of dog foods. The minerals, the vitamins, and the supplements that they put in there are usually after a cooking cycle, so they don't cook out. So you're getting some of that value in there. But I would highly recommend, again, that rotation of protein, that rotation of canned food, again, somewhere between 50-50 to 65-35% kibble to meat, pure meat ratio, plus on top of that, plus the supplements then. As far as how you read and interpret that, do a little bit of study on some, what was it? Some of those Dog Food Advisor and some of those others have a kind of a basic understanding for lay people to read and start seeing. They're not judgmental necessarily. They just say things like, when they add tomato pomace. Well, what is tomato pomace? Okay, so you look up tomato pomace and you realize, okay, that's the leftover of, with zero nutritional value, what's left of a tomato after they squeeze the hell out of it. Everything comes out of it that they use it for other food sources. So there's really nothing left. It's just a filler. And that's literally what it is. It's a filler and a binder. So on a lot of those sites, they say, I don't remember their wording. It's been years since I looked, but they say something to the effect of, this ingredient is disputed whether it has any good effect for dogs or something like, some aspect. So you start looking at those items and you say, okay, well, peas, tomato pomace, white rice, different things. You go, well, okay, so these things are questionable as far as ingredients. So the fewer that they have, and the much further down the line when you're reading the ingredients, they have to put it in order of what they are as far as a percentage in that can. So if they're way down the line, there's virtually no effect. Once you get past the first 5 to 7 ingredients, the amount is tiny. It's less than 1% of any of it for any of those things. But some of them do, even at that percentage, have an effect. So you got to know what you're looking at. And I would just do a little bit of reading and study and kind of balance it out. But if you're looking at meat sources, for instance, for kibble, and they have the first 5 things listed are kibble, are meat sources, that's good. But you also have to take the water percentage out of it. So when it goes in, that the weight of that meat, once they cook it down and dry it out, goes to about 20% of the volume that it was originally. So what you're trying to look for is, if the first ingredient is not a animal protein, it's probably not a good kibble. If the first one is meat and the other thing is some plant-based, well, now you're really going down in percentage. It's not very good either. So you're looking for 2 or 3 or up to 5 meat protein sources, including some meal. Now, meal is, ground up parts, whatever, ligament, bone, you name it, anything that's left over, feathers, stuff like that. Some of that is good. They still get the protein values out of it, and some of it's necessary. So, you don't want that first. But, at 5th, 7th, 20th place, that's okay.
What's the difference between the verbiage of, let's say, byproduct versus meal? Because I see both of those on the back of the bag.
Yeah, byproduct is probably not a good thing. Meal is okay. Fish meal, for instance, they'll post that. Just about anything in a fish is good for them, period. And so a lot of the leftovers of what human consumption doesn't want to use of the fish, the guts and the bones and all that stuff, when they crush that up as fish meal, that's good stuff for a dog. There's nothing wrong with that. Okay. So I don't know if that helps. Byproducts, no. That's what's left over on the floor. Okay. I hope that helps. I got a million questions here, so I'm sorry. I'm trying to get on to these things. Where did we stop? Okay. There, from Chelsea, potentially silly question. Does Nelson just call each of these companies and just ask them how they cook it? Is that something they can readily answer? Well, it helps to know some of these people and how to approach them. I've made inquiries with some of these companies. Yes, Avengers, Merrick, some of the other companies. I even called Diamond Foods when I was experimenting with Taste of the Wild, and asked them. They were actually quite nice about it.
So how would some of us approach something like that if someone was interested in digging in a little bit?
So I would look for articles. Honestly, there's a ton of information out there in press briefings, companies, company reports, stuff like that. There's a lot of information out there on the internet about each one of these companies and how they process food. The ones that are really proud of their product, you'll find out a lot about them. Okay. Okay. From Cheryl, how do you feel about freeze-dried foods and treats? Fine, but I would not do freeze-dried as a main diet. In other words, I would not put freeze-dried as 50% or more of the main diet, because as you saw on that chart, if you have the meat versus cooked versus freeze-dried, you're losing amounts of protein each time you do that.
And freeze-dried is part of that, like it's worse than cooked?
I wouldn't say worse. I mean, depending on, so those ranges, they can range from 85 to 70% of the protein level of raw or flash cooked or braised, as I do on the outside. And freeze-dried can be kind of in those same ranges. So it depends on the process, the amount of time, whether they took moisture out or not. All of those things have a factor on how much of that protein is lost. So anywhere from 10 to 20, 30% can be lost depending on the manufacturing process. Okay.
Diane asked earlier specifically, she said thoughts on freeze-dried food versus raw. Should we be pure raw?
I think you can do it. Once again, I think you could do, out of convenience, if you have freeze-dried available, and you say, well, I'm sorry, dogs, I don't have time to fix all of this stuff and I didn't pre-fix it. So here's your freeze-dried meal. That's fine. I wouldn't make it 100% of the time like that though. Okay. Again, this is about understanding the nutritional needs, the digestive system, and to pre-plan for things. If sometimes you got to throw a 2/3 kibble and 1/3 of canned meat in there, and put a little beef broth in there and mix it by hand and stick it down for your dog, they're going to be fine with it, and they'll be okay health wise too. But if you just stick kibble down in front of your dog its whole life, especially the same one, it's not going to be a very healthy dog. Okay. From Alex, what are your thoughts on Inukshuk and the Volhard diet? Okay, well, Volhard, so Inukshuk, I would personally rate at a low 4 out of 5. So in other words, right at 4, maybe in that 4 range, if you're doing a 5. But that's my personal opinion. If you look at the ingredients on Inukshuk, which I have, and how they do it, it's good. It's pretty good. It really is. Nothing wrong with it as long as you supplement. And the supplements, Volhard, again, Volhard diet is excellent, but don't be lazy about putting other things in it too. Okay. Because if all you do is feed, 80-20 hamburger meat and Wendy's stuff in there, and that's all you ever do for your dogs, they're going to get filled up with whatever nutrients they can from that, but the other stuff that they need, they're not getting. Okay. And that's what, it eventually it'll go down. That's why I do, food grade diatomaceous earth, because the selenium and silicone is depleted out of every body, including humans, over periods of time. And so to supplement that gets that back up. I will tell you that there were several years ago, trainers that contacted me. Their dogs were getting cloudy eyes. And I'm not talking about glaucoma or any of that stuff, but their eyes started getting kind of cloudy. And I said, use the diatomaceous earth for 10 days and then once a quarter. Cleared up their eyes. That's the minerals that they needed for the body to have that. It's not going to make your dog see when they're blind. It's not a miracle thing. Okay. But it does allow the body to absorb those minerals that it needs to provide clear eyes. Okay. So yeah, Wendy's stuff is great. If you're on that, you got 98% of what you need. I'll put it that way. Okay. From Rachel, how to read, interpret label on kibbles. Okay. Manufacturers say they use 70% first meat, but then it loses proteins and all the content proteins. So let's say down to 23%. I don't understand that process. Okay. So again, ingredients, 70% protein. They add in the plant-based proteins also, which are not absorbed by dogs in the same way, if at all, depending on the dogs. But they can say on the label, 70% protein. Got it. So there it is. Ingredients, so plant-based protein sources, usually, depending on the manufacturer, it could be anywhere from 20 to 50% of the proteins. I've seen some that were up to 70% of the proteins counted from plant-based stuff. So not very good stuff. Pache, any thoughts on the website Dog Food Advisor on how they rate foods? It's a start. I think there's 3 major sites that Dog Food Advisor is one. I can't remember the other 2. It's been years since I looked at them, but if you look at all 3 of those major sources, Sometimes they agree, sometimes they don't, but you learn just from reading of what they're saying, that's good. It's a little educational, and that's what you want. I don't ever take their stuff straight as advice unless I've experimented with it. Cheryl, what do you think of Raw's dehydrated meal-free kibble? As far as the brand, I don't know. I mean, again, I would say it's one of the better sources of things. If you're using a freeze-dried or a dehydrated meal like that, and rehydrate or use it that way, it's better than if you're just feeding kibble. But once again, I would like to rotate as much different protein sources and supplements as possible. So, okay. So yeah, your dog's going to be a lot better off on those, yes, but I would rather rotate and supplement things. And again, let me clarify. Raw feeding is probably the best thing you can do, honestly. But not everybody is going to source those things. Not everybody has the time, the effort, et cetera, et cetera. I'm trying to make it to where I did for my clients. I made it as easy as I could for them to follow some aspect of a rotation and understand they need to be involved in their dog's health. And so that's what that was all about. And this was my old line of thing was developed long before there were sources of raw foods other than just going to a Mexican meat market and having them chop up a chicken for you. So it was very difficult. It was more expensive. It was it was laborious. And I knew my clients weren't going to do that. So, okay. Jessica, are sardines also one of the salty foods that should only be fed once every other week or so? Yes, but again, water only, which reduces the saline aspect of things. So you can give them as treats, just a sardine a day or something like that, once every couple of 3 days, something like that. That's a good source. And I tell you what, it is the best. It's the healthiest and best motivator treat I have ever seen as a sardine. You stick that in front of a dog, they will do anything for you. So, do you let dogs have clamshells? No. From Dale, what about canned chicken in water broth? The human grade chicken is good, but not on a regular basis. So I use different, like Chicken of the Sea has a 10-ounce can of the chicken. It's actually probably what a lot of Mexican restaurants use in your chicken tortilla wrapped burrito thing. So yeah, it's good as a supplement for kibble or by itself, frankly. So yeah, that's a good source, but I wouldn't do too much chicken anyway. From Jonathan.
Real quick, should we be concerned about small bones in sardines?
No, I've never had a problem even with a 2-pound fluffy. Maori was rebranded to Koa. Thank you. And they're an American company. Yeah, they got bought out. They're not made in New Zealand. You are right. Chelsea, frequency of feeding turkey necks. For me, once every couple of weeks. And again, I don't do a lot of treats for my dogs. I don't use food as a motivator. So, I'm the weird one out there. I do things differently than everybody else. So there you go. That's just me. From Jenny, this may have been mentioned. Would you use canned mussels, oysters be okay on occasion? Rarely, maybe 3 to 4 weeks is all, once every basically it's the other the other contents, the preservatives, the salts and stuff like that, that are the main issue with especially mussels and oysters. And sardines are generally wild caught. A lot of the mussels and oysters anymore depends on where they come from, or they could be farmed. That's why I don't like Atlantic salmon. That's the Pacific salmon. Atlantic salmon generally is farmed, and that's pretty nasty stuff. Kind of like tilapia. I will not eat tilapia at a restaurant. It's pretty nasty. Other whitefish, yes. Pache, I found it very hard to find broths without onions in it, and no, they're toxic. Is this a concern with broth? Yes, it is, but I usually find particular brands or pure bone broth. And yeah, check your ingredients. You're correct. The amount that you would use, I mean, you're not going to have a dog drink a 20-ounce bone broth box in one sitting. So you would probably use an ounce or two at the most of bone broth in with some other meat source. I warm it up before I put it in with kibble and the other supplements, and I mix it all by hand so it warms it up. It makes it more palatable to the dogs when you warm it up a little bit. So any meat to a body temperature level, essentially. So that's what I would look for. Yeah, it's important for you to find the right brands, and then check every once in a while, make sure they haven't changed the formulas on anything. That's what I do with dog food too. Okay. Kelsey, what about the Rogue Pet Origins 5-in-1? I'm unfamiliar with it, so I have no opinion. Sorry. Jessica, this is behavior related, but suggestions for giving raw meaty bones to dog that has resource guarding tendencies. Do you wait? Blah, blah, blah. Okay. Kinsey answered that. Okay. Sorry.
How do you warm up the food if you don't use microwave?
It's real easy. Pot.
Under your armpit?
No, only in the jungle did I warm up stuff under my armpit, honestly. And yes, I did, but that was in a baggie. Although we called it armpit sauce anyway, because that's what it tasted like.
So stovetop
TMI, yes, stovetop and a pan, yes.
is frozen raw food as good as unfrozen raw food?
Well, refrigerated raw is better. Again, you're going to get a breakdown of some protein level. It's minor. You probably don't have to worry about it because raw is raw. You're going to get a much higher level quality of food in your dog, whether it's frozen or not, frankly. So it's tiny little percentage difference. And it's probably 1,000 times better as a food source than just the, old Roy kibble all of its life.
One more. When you're saying raw is the best, is this home recipes or pre-made like frozen patties?
Home. Again, don't get lazy. Is all one of the reasons I wanted to do this course was to describe the digestive system so that you understand it's not just one thing. It's not a simple thing. It can be simple when you rotate what you know is good for your dog over time. That's the simplicity of it. Make sure that you're rotating things so that the digestive system can absorb what the body needs when it needs it. Otherwise, you're just putting calories in. So, yeah, raw sources are better. And rarely do I ever do pure raw. I'm going to braise the outside of it just because I want to make sure that whatever little buggies get on there from whatever, it's going to take care of those. Plus, it makes it palatable to the dogs to have it warmed up. It makes a better scent for their nose, and it tastes like something that's just alive, and that appeals to them as predators. Okay. From Pache, also my vet recommended against any coconut oil in a dog's diet. She says that it destroys your guts. I would like more information on the relevance of this point of view. I tend to agree there, and the only time I ever use coconut oil is once in a blue moon if a dog has a problem with its skin, coat, or paws. So in other words, if it's very dry, the additive of coconut oil, and I've actually used it on the skin as a topical as well, coconut oil, but not that much. So I'm going to use salmon oil, krill oil, and during the time, that week or so that the dog needs supplement, I'm going to rotate once every 3 days. I'm going to put a little bit of coconut oil in its food. And that's the only time I ever use coconut oil. Gosh, good question. From Tracy, what's a good joint supplement? I think we went over that, did we not? Glucosamine chondroitin, obviously. I think I showed you which supplement I use for my 18 and 9-year-old huskies.
Tracy said yes, it was.
Okay, thank you. From Pam Chamberlain, that was my question exactly regarding the dosage of the supplements. Okay. I use the low end of any recommendations because I use it in a schedule regularly. So manufacturers want you to use more of their products, so they over recommend it always. That's why we have a bunch of fat dogs, because everybody's feeding off of what it says on the bag. Right? Right.
Yep.
Okay. From Stacy, can you overdo it with these supplements? Yes, especially if a dog is eating kibble now. Okay, well, that's an interesting thing. Okay. Would we look at omega-3 sources on the label? Generally, if it's cooked, the omega-3 doesn't exist. It existed before they cooked it, and then it's gone. They can say it was there and put it on the label. It doesn't mean it's there. For example, and then slowly test and watch as you add some of the things, wondering how to avoid too much of a good thing. First of all, quality, source, quantity, and frequency, and you watch the dog. If you know your dog, and this is where you get more sensitive to your dogs specifically, and you see when they're happy, they're healthy, they feel good, they don't smell, they, all of these things, they have good energy. That's your picture in your mind. And when something changes, you go, okay, what's off? What are they missing? And wow, I'd take another class to teach you guys how to do that. Sorry.
I'll just add a note on that real quick, is it's very subtle. So you really have to pay attention to the details of your dog. So for example, like the texture of the coat. I mean, it's a subtle change, but it can change. I have a client with an Aussie that I just had them add Nupro, salmon oil, sardines, and switch to Merrick instead of, I think, Royal Canin. And within 2 weeks, yeah, I know, within 2 weeks, I'm seeing a difference not only in the dog's energy, not energy as in it's excited and running around, but energy as in how they feel, their presence. And then the coat is looking more vibrant. So it's just little things like that you're looking for. And if you're that in tune with the dog, then you can really see the difference of when you add a supplement or whatnot, that you can tell that difference.
Yeah.
Hopefully that was helpful.
So the theme of this is you have to be invested in wanting to know about your dogs. And it's your responsibility to do so. You're the one that brought that life into your home. So yes, you can overdo it with supplements. That's why it's spare as far as the percentage. Again, I err on the side of less than 5% total supplements. And rotate through them too. From Laura, I've heard that you can use DE on your grass. Is that food grade as well? Yes, I don't mix it up. I don't want another around. I don't want pool filter DE around. Okay, only food grade or feed grade, and make sure it is absolutely labeled that way. If someone tries to sell you something that doesn't have food or feed grade label on the outside of it, don't buy it, don't believe it. And that's the only thing I'll use on topically in my dog's food or on carpet if you need it for fleas and ticks and stuff like that. And flea infestations are the worst, guys. I've had 2 in my entire time having dogs, 2 flea infestations. And the DE was the best at getting rid of all of it, because once the egg cycle after a few days goes through and they hatch and they get the DE on them, it kills them because it desiccates them, because it scratches their exoskeleton, and it kills them before they go to eggs again, to the egg cycle. So that it takes somewhere around 6 to 7 days to get rid of fleas indoors, and you would spread it all over your yard too, wherever your dogs have been, if you ever have fleas. It's a pain in the butt, but once they're gone, they're gone. And there isn't any poison being poured into or on your dogs. From Jenny, L-glutamine helps to rebuild the gut in humans. Is this possibly the same with canines? L-glutamine, I believe, is high in bone broth. Yes, and helps rebuild the gut, to my awareness. Yes, that's an easy answer. In regards to lamb's quarter, goose foot is similar. Is it okay to feed? Yes, but I prefer lamb's quarters. Just my preference, because it's natural in the environment that I've always lived in the Midwest and South, frankly. So that's the main reason. I'm used to lamb's quarters and the iron levels in it's the highest of any of the greens, I believe. So from Cheryl, what are your thoughts on Nature's Logic all food fortified supplement? I'm not familiar with it enough to have an opinion on it, so I'm not going to lie to you. Okay, but I'll let you know if I have any opinions, but I don't. Chelsea, does poke need to be cooked or can it be fed raw? Either. Anytime you cook something, it bleeds out a lot of the nutrition. So I prefer using it raw, both for humans and for dogs. But again, you're only talking about 2% of the total volume. And really, it's, a half a leaf like this that you're going to chop finely and put in there. That's all that's necessary. It's not a ton of it. From Rachel, if kibbles are open for too long, it's losing its value. Yes. Is this also true for powders like Nupro? Oxidation of food is a problem, and it tends to decrease the effectiveness of all foods of any type. So if you have a 20-pound bucket of Nupro and you've got one little tiny dog, yeah, it's probably going to lose its effectiveness over time. Don't do that. That's why smaller amounts for fewer and smaller dogs. I've got 4 medium to large dogs, which is the smallest amount I've ever had. So, so I gauge what I buy based on that. And I'm generally buying food each week, both canned and kibble and all the other sources. So each week, at least once every 5 to 7 days, I'm buying food again. And that's just the way I develop it. Cheryl, I feed raw femurs on occasion. Any issue with this? No, just watch the teeth health of your dogs. Make sure that you're not raw femurs are okay. But again, I'm going to prefer the softer turkey neck, which is not a load-bearing bone, and its structure is more amorphous than linear in the shattering. So its strength, on a femur, its strength is this direction, not this direction, right? So a dog can chew through that, but with a turkey neck, these vertebrae really have no purpose other than to hang the head on and to rotate. So there's not much linear structure to it. It's more amorphous. So when they bite and chew it off, it's softer and it breaks off in non-sharp edges. So that's what I prefer. See, where are we? Rachel, other collagen sources besides the eggshell, tendon, a little bit in the raw bone, also small amounts in both bone broth. Okay, that answers that. Tracy, what's recommended for ratio of raw protein to kibble? A third to half of raw or any protein meat source, direct meat source, somewhere between a third to a half of the volumetric amount, and the other part kibble if you want to feed that way. Okay. Mary, why do they need clay? The minerals in it. So when dogs dig, chew on clay and stuff like that, if you have the bentonite clay, actually I buy some DE with the bentonite clay already mixed in with it. Tractor Supply has jars of that like that, and so that supplements dogs and don't need to chew. Fortunately, we've got clay soil here, so when the dogs are chewing the dirt, I'm fine with it. They know what they need. Last page. From Chelsea, is that ratio literally like 1 cup of kibble and a half cup of wet food, or is it less? If you're feeding 1 cup of kibble, I want to add wet. And I want to add wet. You cut that to 2/3 to a half a cup, and you add 1/3 to a half a cup of wet. So it's the total volume of what you would feed your dog. If you're feeding a cup of kibble, I'm going to cut that down and I'm going to supplement it with the meats, the pure proteins. Okay. You don't add volume, you're just going to make a fat bone. From Chelsea, is that ratio literally? Okay, same thing. Okay. From Mary Gordon, source of ionic zinc. Gosh, there's all sorts of different ways to get that through body parts themselves, frankly, but also there are supplements. Can't remember which. I looked at it one time. New Pro actually has a percentage of zinc in it, and I'm not sure if it's gold or silver has more. But that's one of the reasons I use that supplement, though, is it already has a level of that. And as much as I use it once every 3 days or so, they're going to get, I don't ever have to supplement the zinc for the dogs. So, okay. Stacy, how do you handle overall calories on this to figure out how to get the ratio of kibble to fresh meat? Yeah, like this. I mean, literally over time, you kind of get a feel for all these things. That's the whole involvement aspect of you guys are putting in the time here. You put in the time on the class. You're interested enough to see how to do this stuff and how to understand it. So I know you are going to go into this deeper and study this with your dog, and that's what it takes. And when people see your dogs and how healthy they are, they're going to say, wow, how'd you do that? And then you can tell them. So it's the pebble in the pond, and the little ripples keep going bigger. So there we go. From Stacy, how do you handle overall calories? Just talked about that. Also, do you allow about 1.5 to 2 hours for dog digestion before resuming play? My dog always wants to play. 30 minutes or so. Most dogs is fine. because their digestive tract is short and because it goes from the stomach pretty quickly into the intestines. So 30 minutes is fine. For deep chested dogs, you may wait, especially if there's large amounts. The deep chested dog likes German shepherds, stuff like that. If the sidewall of the stomach is not pinned so it doesn't flip over. I have never had a dog knocking on. Oh, I'm sorry, Bosh. That was not the door, buddy. It's okay. Okay, guys, it wasn't the front door. Sorry about that. My dogs thought there was somebody at the front door. I have never had a dog that turned its stomach and had any damage from that. So even not pinned, none of my German shepherds have ever had pinned stomachs, frankly. So yeah. Okay, guys. So 30 minutes at a minimum for even rounded dogs, but deep chested dogs, those are the ones that the stomach will flip if there's, and why does it do that? Because of the gas and bloat, right? And so what creates gas and bloat? What is gas? Gas is an allergic reaction to grains. So if you don't feed grains, you're not going to get the gas in the stomach that causes the bloat, because that's what floats and turns the stomach generally. Okay. So the more you stay away from that type of food, the safer you are with that, on not having that turning of the stomach and creating a problem. So bloat, what happens is the stomach turns and it literally cuts off the blood supply to the esophagus where that turns and to the intestine where that turns. So it literally kills that and your dog can die of it. So, okay. So 30 minutes at a minimum, 2 hours is probably too long. That's a human stomach. Okay, from Dakota, what does Nelson think of pre-made raw patties? Would the meat be too processed for him? I've not personally used them, but again, they would be a decent source of quality protein, certainly better than most of those other foods out there. Pre-made raw patties, that's fine. Again, we'll talk about all the supplements and everything else that you learned in this class. So as long as you do that, that's good. Rachel, pork is not recommended to feed dogs here, as the meat can contain some parasites. They're not good for dogs, but would not harm humans. Is this true for the US too, or is there nothing to worry about pork? Well, first of all, I would never feed raw pork, ever. Trichina is the main problem, and cooked properly, it's fine. So I would never feed raw pork. Jessica, can raw meat be mixed with kibble, or should it be fed separately? It can be mixed. Again, I braise the exterior of the raw meat. That includes organ meat like gizzards and heart, and heart is a muscle, or liver. Sometimes you use chicken or something like that, turkey, and we'll put those in, but those are braised or cooked. From Coda, do you store your kibble in airtight containers? I think I answered this before. Yeah, I make sure it's airtight regardless, because I don't want that constant air change and infiltration, but the bag should be used within 4 to 7 days at a max. Once the seal is broken, that's when you've got a problem. From Dale, what about homegrown and home processed chicken? That would be wonderful. If you can do that, beef as a protein source or salmon or something like that as a protein source is better. But if you've got your own homegrown source, that's wonderful. Jessica, I give my dog Evander's canned food mixed in. Some of the flavors has things like rice, veggies mixed in. Would you avoid these flavors? Depends on the volume of the mix and how much they have in there. Typically with Evander's, it's a lower amount, although some of those they'll have what do they use? They use some of the manufacturers in their canned foods use rice, and some use who is it? Nutri something or other, I can't remember. Uses sweet potato. And sweet potato is probably the least objectionable of the carbs in that range. There is some value to them, but again, you're talking about carbs and sugar, which that's really not good for them. So it depends on the volume of the mix again. From Rosemary, can Giardia be combated with nutrition? Giardia requires medical assistance, but better nutrition helps the immune system to combat all sorts of things. So the better their nutrition, the less they're going to be affected by it. But Giardia is, it needs medical treatment to get rid of, unfortunately. Chelsea's asking for the study you read from regarding rice and should dogs eat it. I think I just gave that to you, didn't I? At the beginning of this. Coda, I was told to feed rice, chicken, and broth when my dog is sick. I'm not feeling, where did this come from? I think I explained that. And it's okay. I mean, use it at the right time for the right thing, but then get them off of it fast and get them back to proteins. Tiffany, can you over supplement taurine? Yes, you can. Dogs, based upon the taurine values that they get from animal proteins, which is where you get taurine. That's what they produce it from. Okay. Cheryl, are peas bad? Not in small amounts, but in heavy, yes, because peas are legumes. And legumes, again, almost all plants have some sort of little neurotoxins in them. And that includes to you. So the less you eat of legumes, nightshades, things like that, the less you're going to have inflammation in your joints, feel bad, feel bloated, all that stuff. That same thing that happens in dogs. So those neurotoxins are actually attacking you. That's why it's important to stay away from those types of things.
So don't eat your vegetables.
No, hell with vegetables. No, I'm kidding. Actually, certain vegetables, depending on, if you take the skin off, for some, it's very good for you. Some have antibiotic properties, like cucumber, actually. So, Diane, do you have a cheat sheet of estimated ratios, nutrient supplements, and greens that you feed your dog, aka an example of what you'd feed as a typical meal? Well, sort of. That's that protocol that I gave to my clients. And did we share that in this? It's an email. I will give it to, let me mark that down. I'll give it to Angela to send out to you guys in email. Okay. Again, it's a start point. It is not the whole thing. You guys have learned a lot from this, but I'll share that. Okay. From Nina, I've heard in previous nutrition class that dogs can only produce taurine, but that they cannot absorb it through a supplement. Is this true? Generally, yes. But taurine supplementation is possible, medically needed, yeah, but they need the source from meat proteins, period, from animal proteins. From Chelsea, is there a simple list of things to look for to show deficiencies like zinc and paw pads? Well, okay. Well, some things are obvious, dull coat. I wonder if there are some things generally we need to I'm assuming you mean look over or have been so conditioned to think that it's okay that we don't notice. I would say yes. Dryness and cracked paws, slightly off-colored gums even. And I'm not talking about pressing against the gums and see how long it takes for that, the blood to come back.
Capillary or something.
Yeah. I'm just talking about a slight off coloration of things, but yeah, the dry cracked paw pads or your dog licking all the time, if that's not a yeast thing, then there's something bothering them because that's keratin. Their paw pads are keratin. So anyway, yeah, watch your dog. If there's something bothering them, if it doesn't look healthy or good, you press against the paw pads, you look, I'm looking at my dogs all the time. I make sure as puppies that, and you can go to the puppy class if you want to learn what that was. I'm feeling between their toes a lot every other day. I'm feeling between all of their, I handle every part of them from the time they're puppies to make sure that they have the feel, first of all, that any human can touch them these ways that I say is okay for them to touch. That's why I don't have problems with my dogs at the vets. So anyway, so I'm looking in their ears, I clean their eyes out, all those things. So Pam, I would like to know how adjustment supplement ratios for puppies, for example, Nupro. Okay, well, first of all, Nupro, and again, manufacturers, they want you to use a lot of their product. So they probably tell you 4 times of what it should be necessary. And that's literally the ratio that and Nupro, they give you this little plastic cup, right? And you assume that that's 1 cup thump in your dog's food every meal. That's about 4 times too much for 1 meal. So one of those little plastic cups about that big around and about that deep, that's enough Nupro for all 4 of my dogs. Okay. And I only do that maybe once every 2 days.
Doses for DE.
DE about a teaspoon for a 20 to 100-pound dog. That's all that's necessary. It's an inert material to you. In other words, there's nothing but minerals. And so more than that simply just goes through you anyway. So, so whatever the company go by amounts recommended, I give about 1/4 to 1/3 of that amount to adult dogs, then once per 3 to 5 days. I use other supplements too. That was for that. Okay. So
Now these questions.
now the new questions. Okay.
We've got a handful, not too many.
Good. Okay.
I started rotating proteins every week for 5 weeks now and added Nutro. Zeke has started mild scratching. Any ideas? This is from Barbara.
What kind of dog?
This is Adobe. This is me, Nelson from San Francisco. I was at your workshop in El Sobrante. Adobe.
Okay. Okay. So we know that Dobies have certain proclivities just because of genetics. So you said
His coat is good. It's not
Yeah.
dry. He doesn't
Okay.
have fleas. But
I think
I was giving too much of the Nupro. I've stopped the last 2 days.
Okay.
And on top of this, so changing his microbiome. So it's been 5. He's been through a full cycle. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, with
Okay.
Merrick,
Perfect.
grain
Perfect.
free. Took him off grain free. So is there any physical reaction from his new microbiome at all?
If possible, what I would say is I would initially up the amount of wild salmon oil and krill oil.
Okay.
That's going to help. And this is where I would experiment with coconut oil. I would use it once every 3 days, 3 times, in other words, about 9 or 10 days, and I'd go salmon oil one day, krill oil the next, or krill powder like I've got, and then coconut oil.
Okay.
And
It's
I would
mild, but it's more
Yeah,
than it was. It's still very
I
mild.
understand. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the coconut oil is going to help with dryness, itchiness, stuff
Right.
like that on the skin and coat. That's what it's used for. That's all it does.
Yep.
Okay. But it sounds like the omegas complexes is what usually the itching is from. It may be an
Oh.
allergic reaction to something else though that's in the food chain. So I watch which protein that you're feeding and how he reacts.
Yeah. I
'Cause
will
he may
say it
be-
was a seamless transition from grains to non-grains and even a different, he was on Akana before. So it's been seamless as far as his bowel movements.
Okay.
Yeah, that's been,
But I
fabulous.
would watch. So what are the proteins that you're using?
I'm using
the
the
base.
beef, duck,
Okay.
salmon,
Okay.
what is a fourth one? Sorry, lamb.
Okay. So watch the lamb. Watch when it started.
Right.
See what happens. But I would
Okay.
supplement with the oils, and then I would watch which week it seems to be
A
more.
little worse. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that I've been trying to do that. I'm not sure that it's worse one week to another. So I'm not sure it's the proteins.
Okay. Well, it may be overall. See, here's the issue is, okay, another. So 30 years ago, I was lecturing about environmental illness in humans
Yeah.
with Dr. William Ray. Dr. William Ray is a preeminent physician in the world for environmental illness. He was the thoracic surgeon who actually worked on John F. Kennedy when he was shot in the throat at Parkland Hospital. And he got sick, and he went to the only doctor that could actually help him was up in Chicago. And then he studied all this and he gave that up. So he started working as an environmental physician, understanding environmental illness in humans. And he created an entire ward in a hospital. When you walk into it, which by the way, you can't wear any smelly stuff at all,
Yeah.
nothing. And you wear, basically a medical, Tyvek suit. But when you get in there, the air is it's literally smells sweet, and it's so light that it's so easy to breathe in there. When you come back out of that ward, it's like you went into heavy water and you're trying to breathe it.
Mhm,
So it's
mhm.
really strange. But he and I lectured. He lectured on the medical end. I lectured on the architecture end of the actual built environment and what we ingest through water, food, and the air.
Yeah.
And even touch. So what I learned from him was in 70% of the toxins that we get are actually in our water. So
It's always,
filter
I
your
always give them filtered water. I've been doing that for
filter your
years.
water, make sure that it's
Yep.
proper filtration. Number
Yep.
2 is the rest of the foods.
Yeah.
And
And it might
and
be environmental.
it
I
might
mean,
be the
we got a lot of
grasses
dust,
or
we've
some,
had whatever, yeah, all
there you
kinds of
go.
stuff, yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
but thank you.
Yeah. So what I would watch, I would actually do a good, very mild puppy-like, not scented shampoo
Right,
on him. See if that helps him
Yeah.
with the omega-3s, and then watch the
Yeah.
environment and the proteins. Okay,
perfect. Great, thank you very much.
you bet.
All right.
Okay.
Next question. From Diane. I have a question about stomach sensitivity and whether there are supplements that should be included in the diet to increase her good microbiome. She tends to want to eat a lot of grass and has had a sensitive stomach.
What kind of dog?
And with Nelson's diet, will this change over time?
Yeah, thanks, Nelson. She's a mixed. So we had her DNA tested. She's a rescue. And she's like 75% American village dog, whatever that is. She's from Mexico. Exactly. And she's got German Shepherd in her. Yeah,
Mutt.
exactly. Total street dog from
Yeah.
Mexico. And she, as a puppy, they found her as a puppy, no mother around, starving. So they had to bottle feed her. So she's had issues from the beginning of stomach
Yeah.
issues. And I don't know what to do because she seems to react strongly to fish is not good for her. She
Yeah.
and so I don't know
Fish don't
whether
walk around on the street, so probably never got to any of that.
yeah, and they found her in the desert. So I was like, yeah, that's
Yeah.
probably it. But so we've been doing the switching of the diet as you suggested. But she's still eating so much grass and
Yeah.
you can hear her stomach,
Okay. So
Yeah.
what are you feeding specifically? So probably this dog, more of a street dog, has never had kibble in its life.
No. Well, they found her as a puppy, so she was she probably had kibble before we got her, at the rescue, I imagine. But yeah, and also when she was a baby, like we went through, I know, because I was a kid who grew up with antibiotics, and she was on antibiotics, I know, as a puppy, because she had so many, like Giardia and everything else going through her the whole time. So I know
So how old is she
antibiotics.
now?
She is 2.5.
Okay.
Yeah.
So genetics is one thing. And then once again, like I talked about, how you feed a puppy and how you train both the gut and the brain as far as what is acceptable.
Right.
So that dog survived, however it survived, and even the mother's milk was the same type of situation.
Mm-hmm.
So it was whatever was off the street. And you're fighting an uphill battle against nature here to try to get that dog into a healthy state. So what I would do is I would work with probably one base protein source at a time and see what is most mild and see if we can't supplement then at that point.
Okay.
Rather than a broad range of things, I would probably go stronger with something that is, I hate to say this, but something that's milder. Go to a Mexican meat market and get chicken.
Really?
69
Okay.
cents.
Yeah.
So 69 cents a pound. They'll just, and then cook it mildly. Don't have it raw because we don't want to mess up the stomach that much more. And then do supplements. But yeah, once you heavily, it takes a long time for that gut microbiome to be good.
Yeah. Well,
So
and Nelson, I'm the one of the people that asked if we could do like a individual consult, and
okay,
I would be
well,
so willing to
let's
do that and
okay.
pay for that.
Let's do that. Let's do that
Yeah,
because
thank
this is
you.
a longer answer. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. Should I reach out to Rachel? I'm also in your RBBM1 course too, so I'm in
Okay.
touch with Rachel. So maybe I'll just reach out to Rachel and see if we can set a time up or something. I'd really
Okay. Sounds
appreciate
good.
that. That's really
You bet.
helpful. Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
All right. From Laura, does feeding a kibble diet long-term affect the pH of the stomach acid?
Not, let me put it this way, probably less than 1%. It's the way the body senses what's in the stomach. And so how quickly it turns, once again, that 7-hour period of high pH, very low pH, 1 to 4, 1 to 3, basically, which is highly acidic, and then how it goes through the entire intestinal system. It goes through a major cycle in 24 hours. And that's what happens regardless of what type of food is in there. So it really doesn't affect pH that I'm aware of. So,
From Brandy, curious about thoughts on freeze-dried probiotics, for example, Adored Beast Apothecary brand.
Okay, I'm not familiar with the brand specifically. As long as the freeze-dried aspect, as long as that chain of custody has not dropped out of refrigeration, I'll put it that way. So they're relying on the refrigeration and the cold to maintain the colony. As long as the chain of custody for that company, in other words, they delivered it in refrigerated or frozen, food trucks, stuff like that. And where you get it from, if it's a store or whatever else, their chain of custody hasn't allowed it to completely thaw and be warm, then it's probably pretty darn good stuff. So that's always the question, though, is what is that chain of custody and how do they ensure that the colony formation isn't killed off by heat? That's it.
From Justine, if a dog is prescribed a low-fat diet from a vet due to pancreatitis, is there a way to transition off prescription diet without an acute reaction / stress reaction to the dog's digestion and proper protein diet, or to a proper protein diet?
Honestly, that's a longer answer than that I want to take the time for here.
Sign up for a one-on-one.
No, it really is, because that now you're getting into the medical side of thing. I don't want to supplant a vet. I will be happy to talk you through the different scenarios of it and what I've done before. But yeah, I'm not a vet. I'm not getting into their medical side of things at all. Okay. But as far as nutrition, yes, I will be happy to talk to you.
Justine said, thank you.
Okay.
A vet recently said that because dogs have been domesticated, they aren't able to digest different things well when they are newly added to the diet. And that's why you shouldn't change their food. Do you think this is true as far as why new foods upset the gut?
No, it's all about the microbiome and how healthy it is. Period.
So the vet saying, how they've been domesticated, are they indicating genetics?
Yeah.
So you're talking about genetics versus the microbiome in the gut.
Yeah, genetically, no. I mean, genetically, they're more diverse than wolves are as far as food sources. Wolves have basically zero amylase in any part of their body, including pancreas. So when they eat the contents of the stomach and all of that, they're getting nutrients, but they're not getting any proteins from what's in the gut of, for instance, a large ungulate animal, which eats grasses and things like that. Okay.
Great. From M. Gordon, bone broth is cooked for a long time.
Yes.
Is its nutritional value in the minerals and chemicals?
Yes.
Okay. This is relating to the previous comment about cooking meat destroys protein.
Yeah. Well, yes, it reduces the amount of proteins, but it's about the minerals, it's about the collagen, it's about the other things that you get out of bones. Yes.
Cool. From Cheryl, HeartGuard is a dewormer. Why add diatomaceous earth?
Because I don't use HeartGuard.
Okay.
And honestly, with my dogs, I haven't used a dewormer on them in probably 20 years. Haven't needed to.
From M. Gordon again, do you do dewormers only as needed, or is it something that you do annually?
No. And the health of your dog, if you're looking at the output, meaning the poop, and you understand the health of that, and you understand what it should look like, you're studying it, you get an annual checkup for your dogs from the vet, and they look through the poop, and they say, yeah, it's clear, it's fine, all that stuff. Those are good indicators. So the health of the dog, it's honestly, I mean, worms is not a normal thing in a domestic household. And if you're going out into environments, and of course, a lot of worms come from, fleas, mosquitoes, ticks, stuff like that, and other sources, certain water sources, then, and what the dogs eat off the ground, well, then probably shouldn't be going in those areas with your dogs. I know that sounds like a simple thing, but know where your dogs are going and avoid those areas that are more of a danger. It's just like, you don't go down with $1,000 bills hanging out of your pockets at 2 a.m. into the ghetto area. I kind of avoid that area like that. Sorry.
My dog's gotten worms twice now.
Okay.
I know if they're these long, thin worms, she's pretty much an indoor dog. She's a little fluffy white.
Oh, okay.
So she's not out mixing around. She's not in places that I would consider dangerous. She's not, and I'm pretty good about, monitoring her food and things.
Yes.
So
Again, sometimes mosquitoes, other things will create those.
Okay.
So you just have to watch the environment. I would use DE if you're just
Okay,
taking her out in the backyard. I would use DE in the backyard.
Okay. Okay.
It needs to be out there for 3 or 4 days between raining. Okay. It needs to be in a powdered form, not packed. So pick a dry time. And take a 40-pound box and spread it out. Make it look like snow.
If we walk, yeah.
Right.
If we walk along a path that it's kind of like the doggy poop path that all the dogs go walking, is that a place that could be kind of jeopardy? Okay.
Very
That would
highly
probably be it
extreme.
then.
Yeah, and then all the dog has to do is lick its paw, and guess what? It's got worms.
Got it. Okay. That would, yeah. Another
There's your
question.
number one source.
Yeah,
Yes.
I'll be careful there.
Yeah.
Do you have any other internal things that can be used for flea prevention? Such as my parents used to put yeast in the dog food, and that seemed to help a bit.
Yeah.
But with that unbalanced yeast in other ways.
Not necessarily. It's absorbed a different way through
Okay.
the digestive system. It's not like an external yeast. They're different yeasts as fungi. But garlic, again, I wouldn't overdo garlic because it can become toxic. But if you add a little bit of garlic in, it seems to be a repellent. But frankly, I don't do anything with them. My dogs, I just don't take them where there's fleas and ticks anymore.
Okay. Have you heard about yeast in the past from any other
Yes.
sources? Okay, so that's a legit
Again,
thing.
there's some wives' tales about both of those things. So I don't know how much actual research. There's probably somebody's probably been paid to do some research on it somewhere.
Okay. Yeah. Fair enough. Thank you. And
Sure.
just thank you for the generosity of your time. This has been amazing. I have absorbed so
I'm
much.
glad.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. Appreciate it. Anything else?
3 questions left,
Okay,
or 4.
good, because I'm about to turn into a pumpkin.
Yeah, and I have an hour drive home, so. Chop. Lisa asks, is soy an ingredient to avoid in supplements? I noticed it in Desiquin.
Yeah, as much as you can. Now, Desiquin, for its other properties is very good. And if you're just using that once a day or, once every other day or something like that, the percentage of it's very small. So I wouldn't worry too much about it. I use Desiquin on my old dogs. So.
Okay. Would chicken necks be the same as turkey necks? I heard chicken bones break in shards.
Again, raw only, never cooked bones. And number 2, I like turkey because they're larger. And so that any size dog actually has to chew on it instead of just try to inhale it whole. That's why I prefer the turkey necks, because they're larger than the chicken necks. And, you know, a dog will get excited about it and just try to inhale it, and it may get stuck, and that's not a good idea.
Unless you have a 2-pound fluffy.
Unless you have a 2-pound fluffy. But my dog sizes, you know, 80-pound dogs
Yeah.
need something larger.
From Kaya, are ancient grains any better or worse? than
No,
other grains? No.
no, they're grains.
Is that just a branding thing then?
Oh,
Marketing.
sort of. It appeals. It's just like the brands of dog food that have these. It looks wonderful when you have this meat source and all these grains and fruits and stuff like that, until you realize that that's not what dogs eat. But it looks great to a human.
Yeah.
It looks like healthy.
What about flea and tick control?
Again, DE, as far as control goes, DE as much as possible. You just spread it around, make sure you don't aerate it so it's breathed in, because then it gets into your alveoli and cuts the alveoli in your lungs, and your lungs bleed. So don't have it powdered up in the air. Same thing on a dog. If you put it on a dog and you rub it down into the skin, you don't want to fluff it up and have it aerate in the air. Otherwise, you breathe it in, the dog breathes it in, and you cause problems in the lungs. That's the only thing about DE. You do not want to have it powdered, floating around in the air, and it will, because it's a very fine powder. So you need to be careful on spreading it on the dog or carpet or outside there. That's the best preventative I know. As far as if I am going in a known area where there's fleas, ticks, and I suspect there's wild animals, you know, running in a creek, and I have to go there, like when I used to do search and rescue, I will take actually it's strength for horses for flea and tick control. And I will spray basically from along the lower body. If the body is here, I spray a line along here and down from there. So up into the front pit area, which is where ticks love to go, and all the way down the legs and lower body. And then I will put a little on my hand, I'll put behind the ears, because those are the areas that dogs can't get to, and that's where they end up. And that's where fleas and ticks end up generally, is in those areas. So if I put a little bit of that, just a little bit of spritz, and do that, I've really never picked up a tick or flea anywhere.
I'm sorry, what are you spraying?
So it's a flea and tick spray for horses.
Oh, just for horses, okay.
Yeah.
Flea and tick, okay.
So it's strong stuff, but by God, I don't want to bring that stuff. I don't want to put my dogs through that, frankly, because there's so many nasty diseases, especially with ticks.
That's it.
Is that all? So this lasted almost as long as the entire course. All right. Okay, guys. Well, I appreciate it. Again, I will put this video is recorded. I will put this video up for you guys to review as well, if you wish to. If there's any further questions, keep it to yourself. No, I'm kidding. Be happy to take a few more questions on email or whatever it is, and if I can answer those things, I will try to share. I'll try to send out what I said I would share with you guys, as far as some of the studies and other things that are good reference points for you, so that you have some backup to your clients as far as what's good and what's not, and the things that have actually been studied, instead of hearsay or well, my vet was told this by this big company that makes food. That's not a good source. So and nothing wrong with vets, vet techs, et cetera, et cetera. They just generally, most of them, unless they're actually canine nutritionists, they don't know about nutrition. They take the word of the companies that are coming to tell them. And those companies have an agenda to sell their product to them. So that's it. Okay. So anyway, thank you guys. Appreciate
Thank you.
you greatly. And
Thank you so
this
much.
will go as an online course. So if you got stuff out of this and you enjoyed it, please tell other people to be on the watch out for it. I want to spread the word. Okay.
You
Thank
bet.
you very much.
Thank you
All right.
so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good
Bye.
night.
You
you.
too. Bye-bye.
Bye.